So when we say that we have an arts and entertainment district here in Decatur, we really mean it. From the Princess Theater to the Alabama Center of Arts, who will be constructing a new student dormitory downtown, we are so grateful for the enrichment provided by these institutions in our community. It's great to see the dormitory, it's been raised, and soon we'll start seeing construction take place there. And today, we're honored to welcome Mr. Phillip Mann, who's the Executive Director for External Affairs for the Alabama Center of Arts. Phillip, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to join us.
It's my pleasure. It's always a pleasure to be with you, Tab. You've been, can I call you Tab?
Sure.
You've been so supportive from day one.
That's nice. If you're just Tab, if you'll stay with that.
You did. Tab's good. Okay, good.
Yeah. So how's Anna?
Anna is good. Anna is in Atlanta right now at, I think it's called the Dogwood Show, because she travels so much with her jewelry.
Right.
So this show, her dad went to do with her. So, but she's in downtown Atlanta in August in the summertime. So I said, you can have that one.
Very good. So family as a whole is doing well.
Yeah, everybody's doing great.
Good. All right. So you're an Alabama native, and you've had an accomplished career in performing arts administration, from serving as an agent at New York City's the booking group, to your work with the Alabama Shakespeare Festival. And then Phillip brings a keen insight into growth and cultivation of programming and growth of the Alabama Center for the Arts. And since his tenure with the Alabama Center of the Arts, beginning in 2018, the Center for the Arts has continued to flourish. And so I guess with that said, to get started,
Sure.
Just tell us a little bit about your journey to the ACA. We'll call it the ACA.
Sure.
And what makes you excited about working with the arts community?
Well, my journey to the ACA was a very interesting one because I'm an Alabama native and I grew up in a theater family. My parents actually met at what was then Town and Gown Theater in Birmingham, Alabama. So I was actually that's where they met. And when I was a child growing up, like my babysitters would have me in the lobby and things like that. And my parents, so many great stories from my childhood. I got to grow up around Fannie Flagg, who was good friends of my parents. And
I saw where Tom York passed away.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
Grant
sure
Fannie was quoted.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I would say that it's both a blessing and a curse, like being around all that stuff growing up, because it's such a very interesting way to grow up, but it's also a very different way to grow up. But so I would say for a certain time in my life, certainly in my 20s, I was like, oh, I'm not going to get involved in all this stuff. I'm going to go on the straight and narrow. Well, clearly that didn't happen. So I actually started my career at the Alabama Shakespeare Festival. At the time, my parents are good friends with Don and Lori Siegelman, and she was active in that organization. She helped get me started there. And in fact, it sounds kind of shady, but that's how I met my wife. I hired her. I was the casting director at the Shakespeare Festival. So that's how I met my wife. And then, so I started my career at the Shakespeare Festival, and then I moved to New York City at a very interesting time. I moved there 2 days before 9/11, so it was a very interesting way to start my career in New York City. But I remember saying to my wife actually on 9/11, I said, well, we weren't married at the time, and I said, well, I guess you got to marry me now. So New York was really, really cool, but 10 years is enough for New York City. We lived in the neighborhood they call Hell's Kitchen, 49th and 8th.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 2 blocks from Times Square,
okay.
Which was great for my wife, though, because she was doing Broadway shows, and so she would get to just bop right out our front door and be at her stage door for Les Mis or Beauty and the Beast or whatever.
Sure.
So it was a cool thing to do, but again, it's a different way of living. And what my wife says to me is, it's interesting because Saban's success at Alabama sort of coincided with me leaving the state, leaving New York City, because she said, I don't know that we can afford to continue living in New York City and you flying to all these big football games. I'm not kidding. So I was able to help convince her that I wanted to, move back down south. So then I moved to Louisiana for 10 years. I worked for Louisiana Economic Development for 10 years, which was a very interesting time because I designed and set up the nation's first tax incentive program for live theatrical and musical productions, and also infrastructure tax credits that are sort of similar to historic tax credits, but these were specific for performing arts venues. So the work that I did in Louisiana, specifically in New Orleans, was really interesting because what I did for 10 years was help them renovate, restore, and rebuild all the historic theaters on Canal Street that were damaged in Katrina.
How rewarding.
Yeah, and you know, when I started doing work like this, I was like, okay, so this is kind of what I was intended to do with my life. You know,
I mean, I would think that would be so rewarding.
It was rewarding, but I don't know how much you know about Louisiana politics, and I'll just kind of leave that alone.
Okay.
But that was an adult portion of activity, dealing with all of that, dealing with their legislature. But the truth is that dealing with politicians and legislatures and public policy and drafting legislation rules and all those sorts of the lobbying process, the hearing process, it's been very rewarding to me because frankly, even though I have the background in performing arts and not-for-profit and commercial performing arts, I think ultimately the reason that this relationship is happening for me here in Louisiana, here in Decatur, is because of my government background.
Okay.
Because as I'm sure you know, and a lot of people know, a lot of the success of the ACA is based on the support of Senator Arthur Orr.
Sure.
And his position with the legislature and his position with the community. So I'm navigating a lot of those waters now too, but I get to deal with well-meaning politicians like you every day, which makes me very happy.
Well, you know, Senator Orr, we've had wonderful legislators to come out of our area.
Sure. Representative Collins,
sure,
great as well.
I've lived here pretty much all my life, and to memory, I've never seen anyone be able to do some of the things that Senator Orr has been able to accomplish, and he has strong relationships.
We know what's really amazing about it, and I know that's not what we're here to talk about necessarily, is that, you know, you have to, you know, there's a, you know, public funding of arts and culture is not necessarily in certain circles the most popular thing in the world.
Sure.
And it certainly doesn't gain Arthur extra votes to do this stuff. And but he believes, as I do, that, you know, and I'll put it this way: if you look at the world, if you look at the planet, what does every known culture have in common? Some form of music, some form of language, some form of communication. So what I believe about arts and culture, and I believe it more and more, I'll be 50 in a few weeks, as I age, is that when you look around and you look at where trouble spots are in the world and you know, things that happen, it's usually due to an inability for people to communicate. And so I believe that everyone can agree on arts and culture. Everyone can agree that there's some spiritual aspect, be it religious or not, that moves them in a way that they want to be part of this. So I know that that's perhaps a little lofty for this conversation, but that's where my belief in all of this comes from, you know, because there are other things that people can do with their lives. But this is what I do with my life, not just because I like my job, because I believe it deep down that this is, arts and culture give people hope.
Sure, and I don't think it's a bit lofty. I think
and it gives people hope, and that is not always easy to find. And when you talk about higher ed and you talk about young people, we owe it to them, you know,
Sure.
because adults can screw up a lot of things, you know, and we do. So I think that there are ways to find things that gifts that we can give kids with our energy and our knowledge and our work that gives them these sorts of opportunities. And the ACA, it's like a castle, you know, for these kids.
Man, that's great. So I want to go back to Louisiana just a second, because I had a thought, and I should know for sure before I bring this up. I should have been Googling.
That's okay.
Was it Huey P. Long was the governor there?
Well, sure, he was, yeah.
He was?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was really a colorful character, wasn't
Man, look.
Did Sean Penn play him?
Yeah, he sure did.
Yeah,
he sure
did a fabulous job.
He did a fabulous job. There are colorful characters all over that I mean, they just lowered the, Edwin Edwards died a couple of months ago. And, you know, probably Louisiana is the only state that lowers their flags to half staff for a guy that was in prison for 8 years. But that's Louisiana.
Yeah.
But I love it, and my wife's from there, right? So Anna was from Baton Rouge originally. Her parents are actually Cuban refugees. You know that, Castro refugees. So they ended up down there. So when it was time for me to move back down south, at the time, she was like, I'm not moving to Alabama. All y'all do is watch football. And I was like, well, yeah. But we moved to Baton Rouge because that was her hometown. So we were there for 10 years. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Now, some may not know about the many benefits of that our community receives because we have the ACA, but
Sure.
What would you like to share with our residents about the impact that the Center for the Arts does have on our community?
Well, what I would first say is that I appreciate the patience of this community and the surrounding area while we sort of have scaled the place up to sort of where it should have been probably when we opened it. I'm not going to dwell too much on the complex sort of structure that was put in place when the ACA was set up, but I will say that I remind people every day that both the city of Decatur and Morgan County are integral partners in the Alabama Center for the Arts. People always say it's Calhoun and Athens State. Well, of course it is, but it's also those other two entities. And I would like to say that working with you and certainly some of the guys on the council now, it's been really good because what I tell them, and I'll just tell you this, I was like, you guys need to step up and say, hey, we're partners in this and help us force the issue. And so that's happening. But what I will say is that while we are an educational institution first, we are a public facility. And it is incumbent on us to make certain that we get that message across to people. Because when I first moved here, we've had this conversation. I live downtown, which is awesome. I'd go to Mellow Mushrooms, and people would say, is that place open to the public? I'm like, what do you mean? Of course it's open to the public. But then I realized that that is our responsibility and that it's our job. Now, I think the message is starting to get out there into the community because you can tell that I'm excited about this. We just completed our first sold-out run of a show ever in the history of ACA.
Oh, congratulations.
Something Rotten, which ran for 4 sold-out performances. And what is even more exciting about that, it was the first, even though it's been around for years, it was the first fully collaborative theatrical production between Calhoun and Athens.
Oh, nice.
And we sold out, and you know, it's like I've said to people, I was like, look, we can do this, right? We just got to get on the same page and just go for it. So that's kind of what we're doing right now. But since I'm a resident of Decatur and you're the mayor of Decatur, it will make you very proud to hear what I'm going to say, that a lot of this recent success, certainly with our musical theater department, is because when I found out that Lauren Cantrell Salerno had been commuting back and forth to Wallace for the past 10 years, I was like, we're not doing that anymore. You need to come work for us.
Good.
So my previous boss, Dr. Burke, and Dr. Estel, who's the Dean of Arts and Humanities for Calhoun, were integral in getting her involved. And so she is going to be a wonderful asset to this community, to the ACA, and we're just proud to have our native people back living and working in our community, aren't we?
Absolutely.
So that's the gig.
So tell us a little bit about you. We have a new boss, Dr. Burke.
I do.
Dr. Burke retired.
He did.
And we wish him the best
Yes.
on his earned retirement.
Yes.
Boy, did a fabulous job.
Oh, he
while
was great.
here.
And I'll say this too, because you know this, but I just can't imagine the stress and the complexity of being a leader through COVID. And so I think it's a wonderful job that he did. It's a wonderful job that you have done and are continuing to do to reassure people that you know that leaders have the best interest in mind of the community. But you know, Dr. Burke was great, but Dr. Hodges is he's a go-getter.
He is.
So if there was anybody that works for Calhoun or the ACA that has felt like they can rest on their laurels, that is no longer the case, which I think is fantastic. So he's got great energy, and he was sitting next to me at opening night of Something Rotten, and he was screaming like it was, you know, the fourth quarter of the Alabama LSU game, and I just thought it was just really, really awesome.
So you and I are members of the Rotary Club of Decatur.
Yes, sir.
And Dr. Hodges recently visited our club.
Yes, sir.
We were away doing something special that you needed to do.
Yes, sir.
And man, he is really dynamic and
Yes.
full of energy.
Yes.
Instead of speaking from the podium, he got down and
Oh, did he really?
He mixed it up with the group. So
I just had my weekly meeting with him, and I always leave with a long to-do list, so, which is great.
Well, now the Center for the Arts is always has something exciting happening.
Yes.
Tell us about some of the latest updates for the ACA.
Well, the first thing I would say is, and this is very, very exciting, and you're going to hear about it a lot more in the coming weeks, but for the first time since the ACA was built, we're going to produce and announce a proper season, a season of performing arts activities. We're going to have multiple theatrical productions. There's going to be 2 theatrical productions done by Athens, 2 by Calhoun, and then for the first time ever, this is going to make you very happy. We are going to do what we can to make the ACA the focus, one of the main focuses of downtown Decatur throughout the entire holiday season.
That's great.
So in the past, since it's a higher ed institution, a facility, the place had been kind of dark. And I'm like, no, we can't do that anymore. And so I'm happy to announce that we will be producing our first holiday spectacular show that's going to take place at the ACA in November. We're talking to the city about some potentially other initiatives for the campus at ACA, but I want to announce to everybody listening and watching today that I'm now volunteering the mayor to play Santa Claus in our production, so I hope you're game for that. You'll have to put on a few pounds.
Sure. Well, so to share the part that we're talking about from the city.
Yes, sir.
And I believe thank you for how you handled that.
Yes, sir.
I really do.
Yes, sir.
But I'll go ahead and kind of let the cat out of the bag, and because
It's not a done deal yet, but
Yeah.
we're working on it.
Yeah, the council is really looking for ways to try to find something that the community will be able to enjoy downtown, right there on your front lawn.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That would be phase 2. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So we'll. I'm
More news soon.
Yes, absolutely. So.
Final thing I wanted to mention though,
Yes,
about the upcoming season, and we're gonna announce the whole season so everyone will know about it, and we're gonna have all sorts of wonderful programming that's not just theatrical. We're going to have great choral productions. We're going to have a busy and buzzing gallery down there. Our gallery is just a wonderful, wonderful place for the public to come and spend some downtime. Our Chief Operations Officer, Jennifer Bonnell, does a fantastic job with that. But one thing I'm very excited about, our next fully collaborative production that's going to be next summer, people are already hearing about it and they're like, oh my gosh, we're doing Rent.
Okay.
So, which is really cool because I actually used to book the Broadway touring production of Rent.
So I'm going to go off script here for just a moment.
Yes.
I was visiting with Dr. Mary McDonald, who's
Yes.
a friend and partner of yours across the street at
Yes, sir.
the Princess Theater. And it was, just a couple of years ago, pre-COVID. Everything, golly, has since changed. And of course, New York, they had their challenges. But we had a big announcement about a Scottsboro Boys show that was going to be, I guess it was written, and then...
Well, it was already written. It was on Broadway already. So
Okay,
yeah.
thank you for, all right.
Yeah.
Do we still expect to find that?
I hope so, but
Okay.
it's also a COVID issue.
Okay.
Because first of all, Broadway is about to reopen, right? Broadway's about to reopen in September, and I'll be very, very delicate with the way I deal with these issues. But in the case of Broadway, for example, you have to be vaccinated.
Okay.
Proof of vaccination, masks. That will probably also be the case for touring productions. And the Scottsboro production that we were going to produce and originate here was going to go around and tour. After we did it, it was going to play multiple places in Alabama, then go around. But so the answer to that question is that yes, I'm desperate to do it, but what I'm also not going to do is start investing months and months of work into something when I know the plug could be pulled.
Sure.
Because it's very expensive and it's very time consuming. But as a member of the community of Decatur, I think it's vital that we do that at some point. Because one of the things about arts and culture is whether it's good, whether it's bad, And whether it's good history or bad history, the way you deal with it is to take ownership of it.
Good.
And once you take ownership of it, you can work through whatever you need to work through. The way you feel about things, the way other people feel about Alabama, or the way people feel about the South. Again, good or bad. If you take ownership of it and say, yes, this happened, this is our history, and we're putting it out there, then you can make progress.
Good.
Does that make sense?
No, it makes, I just like your attitude about everything.
Well,
Appreciate you. I mean, it's effectively.
You got to have it.
Yeah. So I cannot remember the name of the show, but talking about visiting with Dr. Mary McDonald,
Yes, sir.
she was talking about a black box event that the Princess had.
Yeah.
But y'all have a black box
Yeah.
stage.
Yeah.
And I had the pleasure of coming and seeing a show. Again, I cannot remember, but I believe your mom.
It was called Holiday Memories, actually. Yeah. So that was Truman Capote. Growing up, this is another sort of family story. Growing up, every holiday season, a family friend who was sort of an eminent Latin and theatrical professor at UAB named Hubert Harper would come to our house, and we'd invite all of our friends and family, have some food and have a couple of drinks, and he would read Holiday Memory by Truman Capote, which is just a gorgeous little story set down in Monroeville, where Truman grew up with Harper Lee, and it was about his I believe aunt, or great aunt that raised him, Sook, because he was actually born in New Orleans, but his parents basically just kind of dumped him with family in Alabama and split. So Truman Capote's an interesting guy, but yeah, so that show, Holiday Memories, was his two Christmas stories, Holiday Memories, and the other one was Thanksgiving Visitor. But yes, my mom starred in that as the great aunt, and I will say that it was my father's favorite story, and he passed away a couple of years ago, so it was nice to have that opportunity to work on that with my mom.
I knew it was special for you.
Very
I didn't know if
special.
you would get into that part of it, but yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah.
And another maybe unknown fact about the Alabama Center for the Arts is that we're home to the Alabama Arts Hall of Fame.
That's right. We are.
And I remember the first inductee is, I recall, hopefully I've got this right, I better, if I'm going to jump down this trail, was a childhood favorite of mine as a Disney fan and such, and Herbie the Love Bug, but Dean Jones.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
That's right. And it's interesting that you bring the Hall of Fame up, because that's another thing that we will revisit. And I get your late night texts about Chuck Leavell, and he's at the top of the list. By the way, did you hear about Charlie Watts from the Rolling Stones?
No.
He had to have emergency surgery, so he can't go on the next tour with them. So,
Really?
Speaking of the Chuck Leavell.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of off topic, but they're still going to tour with another
The
drummer.
drummer.
Yeah, they're going to get another drummer to sit in. I volunteered, but they didn't.
You know, just going again off script here, but ZZ Top played in Tuscaloosa last Friday.
Yeah.
Lost their bass player.
Dusty. Yeah.
Dusty
Yeah.
in lead vocals, I guess. Was he?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But what on Tuesday?
Yeah.
And then here they are playing on Friday. And
Artists are resilient people, Mayor.
that is
The most
amazing.
resilient people on earth.
Yeah,
So.
that's something else.
Yeah.
Well, we would. I've constantly hidden. He said late night text to Phillip about having Chuck Leavell, who's an Alabama resident, who plays keyboards for the Stones, for
The
Pink
Allman
Floyd.
Brothers. I mean, yeah.
You can see him most anywhere.
Yeah, but the thing about the Hall of Fame, that's also sort of subject to COVID. Everything is, and again, we don't want to schedule something, but the good news, we have the support and the funding for that to continue again because of Senator Arthur Orr. So we're really happy about that. So the next class, hopefully, we'll be able to. I think that you should put down some sort of city decree that Chuck Leavell must be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, just consider it done.
Okay, well, you hear that, America.
Well, and probably Senator Orr. He's probably tuning in. So what's been your favorite part of serving in your role at the ACA?
Well, I'm not sure this is, I'm very happy to be back in
Okay.
Alabama. This is my home. So that's been a great part of it. And also, what's been great about the ACA is the fact that, I don't know if you know this, but I actually had a lot of Decatur friends from high school.
Okay.
Because of debate, because I debated at Mountain Brook. And then I also went, and I also went to Birmingham Southern with John Allison. So, and we were in a band together too. So it was nice to reconnect with all those people. But in the case of the ACA, I will say that the most incredible thing about my experience there is the element of surprise every single day. I wake up every day knowing what I think that we need to work on to try to accomplish. But the great thing about working with artists and creative people is that is the process. And they surprise me every single day. And I surprise myself when I hear ideas and concepts that would have never occurred to me otherwise, that I may have poo-pooed, but then I'm like, that's a fantastic idea. So that's why, again, it's just such a blessing to work in that environment, because creative people and artists and educators, they have a kind of a different way of looking at day-to-day life. And it's where I belong.
Well, it's good that you know that's where you belong.
Yes, sir.
And in our roles, it sounds like there's some similarities there from time to time. So it's hard to believe that 3 years has gone by.
Yeah.
I remember you mentioned living downtown. Kind enough to invite some folks over to
I'll do it again
home.
soon.
Yeah. Had a wonderful time.
Yes, sir.
You're full of hospitality.
Of course.
We're thrilled that you're here. Now that you have done the 3 years, we're looking forward to the dorms and the changes that can bring with how electric that can make downtown become.
Yes, sir.
Even more so as it continues to be. We go through this redevelopment process.
Yes, sir.
Goodness, have you seen the before and after?
I have. Rick Paler showed me those things.
Isn't it amazing?
And it's just really amazing. And, I don't have that personal perspective on it, but I've seen it. But one thing I want to point out to people, though, and I appreciate your kind words, but people need to understand that we're literally just getting started.
Well, that's the question.
What
do you see for the next 3 years?
Yeah, so I went to Savannah a couple of weeks ago with Senator Orr and Clint Shelton to tour SCAD. We spent some time with the president's office.
It's all over Savannah.
It is all over Savannah, and the thing that's very interesting about SCAD and the sort of, if there are parallels to the ACA, is that one of the things certainly that Senator Orr is focused on, because he has the ability to access the resources to do it, is to expand our footprint. And from my perspective, seeing SCAD and other sort of similarly situated small southern towns, we just have this beautiful footprint downtown on 2nd and all around this area. And from my perspective, and I hope, as mayor, you agree with it, I think the greatest thing in the world would be to help brand Decatur as truly an arts and culture city. It's a lot of things. We have all of this natural beauty. We have, great barbecue, but I think that, and initially I was like, well, this is going to be tough, but I actually think that we can do it.
Well, I thought it was an arts and entertainment community.
Yeah,
So
it is. It is. But I'm saying that we can make it brand it nationally and internationally.
So for our viewers, SCAD, can you give us what the acronym represents?
Savannah College of Art and Design.
Very good.
Sorry, and that was actually started in the mid-'70s, and it was sort of started in a similar way that ACA was, that it was sort of like sort of a vision and a dream that people had, that the city had and Arthur had and the schools had, and that's the way that things happen in this world. You come up with an idea and you kind of go for it. And what's important to me, again, is not what happened in the past and maybe not what's happening next year, but what's happening now.
Sure.
And dealing with the energy and embracing the process.
Sure. Now you mentioned Clint Shelton. Is he still on your board?
Clint Shelton is the chairman of the ACA Foundation Board.
Okay.
So I tell people all the time that I spend a lot of time dealing with Senator Orr and Clint Shelton, and they. Well, I love them both to death.
Oh, to be with the both of them and you, you're talking about the dynamic
Well, we'll talk offline. No.
Well, listen, man, we're excited about your being here, your leadership. Thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for taking time out of your day to join us here and to help our viewers know a lot more about the center.
Anytime you need me.
Very good. And we also want to thank you for joining us today. And did you know that the city has a digital newsletter? If not, you can join our distribution list by texting Decatur to 42828. That's Decatur at 42828. Until next time, be safe and be kind. Thank you.